Have you ever walked away from doing something for so long that you kind of forgot how to do it? Well, that was the case with today's project, or at least in the post-production part of this project, as I am having to record audio on a video that has certainly been in the back burners for quite some time. And if you've been a long-time subscriber to my channel, you'll know exactly why that is. Now, for those of you just discovering this little corner of the internet of mine, my name is Michael, and I want to welcome you to Sovereign Gaming in Life Sims, the YouTube channel where I build worlds, lots, and share my thoughts on video games in the life simulation gaming space. And we are indeed continuing to build out my little Sims 3 SimCity project custom world. And I am continuing on with the speed build. And this time around, we are indeed returning back to the downtown core with today's build. Now, what I had mentioned a little earlier regarding my channel and everything is that I am hoping, I've kept my fingers crossed here, that I have been able to successfully launch the first ever SimCity download and the trailer to go along with it. So that is something that I am crossing my fingers at this time. That has been successfully launched. And the only reason why I am recording the audio early and recording this episode early is essentially that I am at a point where I can release the world. I just have to make sure that it's uploaded to the Mod The Sims properly, as well as that, you know, people have access to the files that I dropped in the Sims file share. Now, if you are unfamiliar with that trailer and with what's going on there, it is on my YouTube channel, and so just search through my videos. I've put it into this playlist as well, just so that it is easily accessible for everyone that wants to find the download link for this world. So yeah, at the time I'm recording this episode, everything is pretty much good to go. I'm just waiting for those last little pieces to publish. And so, yeah, whether it actually pulls off or not, and whether people are able to successfully download the world is yet to be seen at the time that I'm recording this audio. But if all goes to plan, it all works out. Today's episode is a lot longer, as you'll see on screen here, and that's because it is quite a complicated project. And I'm sure you've already guessed what we're going to be doing based on the title of this video. But before I get into that, I just kind of want to explain the vision of the area just by pulling up a screenshot here. So don't worry, we won't miss much in terms of me just placing stuff. And essentially in the beginning of the video, I'm just laying out some of the framework just to make sure that everything is aligned perfectly and centered perfectly. But anyways, so as you'll see on screen, the neighborhood of downtown has a really huge green space inside like the middle of it. That's really surrounded by like the parking lots from the boardwalk and the festival grounds, Old Town Fort lots. I completely forgot what those were. And it's also bordered by the downtown central business district. Now, for this project, we essentially are looking at about 464 by 64 grids. And I've also got two oddly shaped lots as well, just kind of off to the southern portions of this green space. Now, the purpose that I had in mind when implementing this green space in the middle of downtown and actually widening the sidewalks that are immediately adjacent to the west and east parts of the street is that I was really looking and hoping to do like a big green space build, and just one 64 by 64 lot was just really not going to cut it for me. You see, essentially, I really wanted to have like a really large urban park just kind of in the middle of the city. And so, yeah, that was really the big vision behind it for this. And today's build, we are starting at the most southern 64 by 64 lot, which is immediately across from the business building and also the science buildings as well. So the reason why I have decided to start here is that I have always envisioned this particular lot to be a metro station, like a major metro station. And in fact, like I have called this lot SimCity Plaza because it's just really going to function as a place for for Sims to really just kind of gather and to dissipate within the downtown area. And yeah, so I've always envisioned that this lot in particular would be that major metro station that Sims would just kind of get dropped off at. And eventually, like sometime in the future, I'm gonna really have to create like its own separate video to explain how I imagine the different train lines to actually work. And that would include like passenger rails with those huge train tunnels that I have running through the middle of the city, and how it integrates with the metro lines as well, because I am kind of a big nerd when it comes to that kind of thing. And I have also been someone that has been planning on placing metro stations at very specific lots, just so that I would reflect realistic metro station layout. So all of that will be in some kind of a future video. It might even be a YouTube short, but that really depends on whether or not the YouTube short orientation wants to agree with the way that I film it. But anyways, that is something that future me will have to worry about. So yeah, today's plan is all about building that huge metro station, that huge metro station that you would see in major cities. And it functions separately from Central Station Library, which is just up to the north, because that would really function as a terminus station, whereas this station here is kind of like a conglomeration of all of the lines before they terminate at Central Station Library in the government campus. So yeah, today is all about doing that. And my vision for this is that I really wanted to make the metro station come alive, and to actually kind of show some sort of an open pit sort of metro station. And you guys are really going to see it evolve over time here, because like I mentioned earlier, this episode is long, and it is long for a reason. And a big part of that reason is because I struggled like hell with getting the metro station to look correct, and to like really give it that open pit feel that also complemented the rest of the layout. So even though this lot is put into like quote unquote green space, you know, looking back, maybe I could have painted this as asphalt in the Create a World program, but I decided to keep it as grass, just so that I had that flexibility between how this plaza would interact with the natural environment and the lots that surround it. Essentially, when it comes to that big green patch just in the middle of the city, I want it all to feel like it's interconnected. And yeah, that was really a big vision here. And with today's build, it's really about creating the first piece of the puzzle that really helps to connect to the other lots that lie adjacent to it. But yeah, this open pit concept was something that I was inspired by several kinds of metro stations out there, and it was something that I really wanted to show, because one of the things with The Sims 3 is that the metro stations really only exist as an object that came with the late night expansion pack. And you just place that object essentially, and it just kind of functions as a metro. It's just like a teleportation object, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, and just to like explain it fundamentally. But yeah, it's something that really kind of bothered me in terms of missing gameplay, because I feel like a metro station, metro rail tracks, and all of that would really help to bring an urban form of city living to life. And it's kind of funny because they did sort of add in those elevated, like futuristic magnetic trains and those magnetic train lines in the Into the Future expansion pack. So it's kind of like they revisited that concept later on. And also, like, there's a world out there called Burrowsburg, and it is, you know, it is a world beyond my skill. I have no idea how they did this, but they were able to get like functioning metro trains, and they actually functioned as rabbit holes, which kind of makes sense considering the context that it's placed in. Of course, that's not the context that I want to add here in SimCity, because I quite frankly have all those rabbit hole buildings built out. But in Burrowsburg, this custom Sims 3 world, it is firstly a gigantic world with an insane amount of detail. Again, I don't know how they did it, and I I feel like at this point I have really watched all of the possible Sims 3 Create a World tutorials out there, and they have like a moving metro train and subway. So it just goes to show like how talented the Burrowsburg world really is. And it like Sim City, my world just kind of pales in comparison to that, but yeah, like it's a world that I used in some cases as inspiration. Like I knew what some of the limitations of the Create a World system was, but when I actually booted up the Create a World tool, I could never in a million years get near to the details and to the level that Burrowsburg is. But yeah, I'm kind of getting distracted here. Let's talk a little bit more about the vision here. With this open pit metro system configuration that I've got going on here, I really wanted to emulate that this particular station carried more than one line, which is why I have those dual island, there's 3 island platforms there so that Sims can, you know, quote unquote, get on or get off at whatever train line they need to board. This is something that I have seen in a lot of like metro systems around the world in terms of them having like multiple platforms to get on or get off of for those different train lines and all that. So that was something that I really wanted to put in here just to really convey that this is not just any kind of a metro station. It is a major transfer station for that Sims frequently used to change to different lines and all that. So that was really important for me to actually convey in this build here. And yeah, essentially like I really wanted to have this open pit metro station that just like kind of sits underneath this really classically designed plaza that's just like a jewel of the city that also kind of matches the platforms that the business and science buildings kind of sit on. Speaking of which, this is totally off topic here, well, kind of off topic, but if you've noticed some of my screenshots in the last couple of builds, a lot of them were taken like during the fall season or maybe even during like the spring season, and that's because of all the playtesting I've really been doing on this world and for these lots and all that. So if you've noticed that things didn't look so summery lately, well, that would really be why. But yeah, back to the vision here. I really wanted to emulate that this big green gap in the middle of downtown is essentially like an antiquity site where there are like lots of ruins and like there's an archaeological site nearby, and that as they dug through the ground, they really discovered that it was actually an important place for ancient civilization way back when. Ancient civilization is something that I kind of nerd out with just a little bit here and there, and so I really wanted to kind of bring that into the build here. I've done it with, I guess, Old Town in some retrospects, but I definitely use classical architecture as inspiration for the Central Station Library. So, you know, I really wanted to continue on with that certain theme just in this particular build here, because I really felt like the platforms that the science building and the business building both sit on just kind of feels out of place, and that it needs to be grounded with something else that just kind of says like, hey, this is an important part of the city. It used to have some sort of an ancient civilization to it. Here it is restored, and here's a really major subway station that lies just underneath it. So that's kind of the idea that I was going for in terms of the design and in terms of the decor, and of course in terms of the function of the lot itself. And speaking of which, the function of this lot I have played around a lot with. You know, at first, like, I made it into a big park, and you know, really the difference here is just that Sims can host events at big parks, or parties at big parks, I should say. And this lot really isn't suited to that kind of thing. And normally this really wouldn't be an important factor to this decision that I made, but it sort of just added into it. But also, like, this isn't a park in of itself. It is a plaza, and it's a plaza that is that has a lot of pedestrian traffic in it, and it just doesn't feel as open or as natural as a big park should feel, in my opinion. So I actually ended up classifying this lot as like just visitors allowed, which is usually a classification that I use for rabbit holes, or rabbit holes that I would think that visitors would actually go to. So I changed this to visitors allowed. Unfortunately, it gets rid of the emoji that Sims get when they visit it, but I just kind of feel like it was more appropriate for this. I don't see this lot ever being used for kind of park activities. It's more like Sims are either arriving to take a train somewhere, or they are taking the subway to this location to then commute to their place of work. So they're not actually using this as a park. And yeah, there are examples out there where there are big metro stations in the middle of a park, but I really wanted this to be an open pit metro station, a large one at that, and one that had a lot more activity on top. That function of it being a metro station, by the way, is something that's really only emulated with those late night objects, with the late night subway stop objects. So unfortunately, like I'm not able to get any kind of trains to like go through this subway station like they did in Burrowsburg, which again is a world that continues to blow my mind. It is a custom Sims 3 world, and man, I am just absolutely dumbfounded by what they were able to do with that. But I'm kind of getting distracted again. I'm getting enamored with Burrowsburg and what they did with that, and how I wish I could achieve that kind of level of design for Create a World. But okay, back to the lot here. The functions of the platforms, the open pit metro station is complete set dressing. You can teleport a sim down onto platform level, but it's not something that that is actually functional. And so that's something that I totally intended. I really wanted to just kind of give the illusion that it's functional, and that's really the reason why I placed the late night subway stops where I did, is just because it kind of shows that there's like a north and a south entrance, that you can access platforms on both sides, and yeah, that was and it just kind of like gives that illusion that Sims are walking down onto platform level and then taking the train. So you can't actually access the platform levels like through a staircase or something, even though that could have been something I could have added in, but I just decided against it. There was a lot going on for this plaza to work and function properly, and a big part of that function came to pedestrian pathways. And I felt that the subway stations, the late night subway stations, was already kind of interrupting the passenger flow enough. And when I did go to play test it, interestingly enough, Sims can actually still walk by those subway stations. Like they don't walk around them, they can actually walk by them, and their pathing seems fine with that. So that was something that I learned towards the end of it, but that still wouldn't have been something that would have changed my mind about making the platform levels accessible or not. So yeah, platforms are actually not accessible, but you can teleport a sim down there anyways if you feel so inclined to. And because I am building this with foundations, the camera gets a little weird when you have like an open pit like this in the middle of a foundation. And so I really took that into consideration as well. Even if it was accessible, you might not get the best angles possible, not unless you're using tab and whatnot. So I kept this thing as inaccessible for the time being. And it's not something I'll revisit to make accessible ever again, because this lot, by the time it gets done, is something that I actually really like, and I stand by the way that it turned out. So I don't imagine that I will go back and edit this lot just because of that reason alone. I just realized this now, and I know I mentioned it before when I was talking about screenshots from previous builds, but I am indeed playing and building this in the middle of the spring season in the SimCity world, so this is kind of how the world looks during the springtime. And yeah, I believe towards the end of the video it actually will change kind of colors and all that, and that's because it'll be summertime by the time I finish off the build here. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the case. So if you see that there's a sudden change in the speed build, like during the speed build, that would probably be why. Fountains. Let's talk a little bit about fountains. I didn't realize this until I was working with the fountains here, but fountains are honestly such a pain in the ass to work with. Now, I love the fact that we have fountains, that we have fountain objects within The Sims 3. I actually think that that was something that was very well done as a gameplay feature, but the one thing that needed to be fixed is the fact that when you place fountains and you use the tool and everything, that it kind of raises the ground around it. I think this is the same case with the pools as well, because I really struggled with trying to get a certain look achieved in the crumple bottom chateau build, but here it is absolutely the same case as well. The fountains are absolutely brutal to try to work with, especially because I had lowered some ground for the open pit metro station platforms, and it was just like not cooperating with me, and it put me through a lot of issues. So I really hated these fountains for that reason. They look great at the end, trust me on that, but to get there was a pretty painful process, and a big reason why is because I had decided to go with an open pit concept for a station. So that was great. Speaking of which, one of the best cheats, like if you yourself are a builder, or even if you just like enjoy building casually, one cheat you should get yourself really familiar with is the constrained floor elevation false cheats, just so that you're able to play with different size walls and all that. It makes a really big difference, and in my opinion, I think that it is a cheat that has it's like an unsung hero. It doesn't get enough credit for, and it really came to save my ass during this build as well, because I was running into all kinds of problems with this. One of the problems with the open pit station, and if it hasn't already been shown on screen, like it will come up eventually, is that if you dig too deep in your world and you go beyond the sea level that it's set at, it will actually flood your ground. It'll generate water, and I actually did end up running into that situation here, which is another reason why I decided not to give any proper access to the platform levels, is because I wasn't too sure if Sims would be able to fit under there comfortably. Like, I think that their heads would get pretty close to the ceiling, but whatever. But yeah, I did run into the issue where I accidentally did generate the water, and that was another reason why, you know, play testing it throughout this build, which was something that I did, was very important for me, because sometimes when you're in the build mode, you won't notice the water because the game isn't running and you can't see the waves. Maybe I'm just blind, but but that's what I find anyways. Like this time, I don't think I actually had to play test to catch the water moving in the open pit platform level, but I did, and you know, that was one thing that I was really trying to avoid with this build, was hitting that water level, and I did. But luckily it didn't take too much to actually get that ground above that water level, which was great. So I was able to raise the ground just a little bit, just enough to get it out of the water, I suppose. And when I did that, it just opened up a whole can of worms of problems, because the fountains were suddenly disagreeing with the level, the platforms above it were disagreeing with it, the trains, the late night metro stations, and the little I guess the little awnings that I placed on top of them were also deciding not to agree with it as well. So it was just really something that complicated this build a lot and really made it hard to do and hard to actually finish. I mean, when I finished this one, it was a beast of a project to actually finish, and it felt like a huge accomplishment towards the end, even though like I'm still like on the fence of the design of this and everything, but I just think that the rest of the green space in downtown just needs to be built out before it starts to come into its own, because I have plans for what sits directly north of this lot, and it's going to be another big park. Well, not another, it's going to be the big park. And it'll help to explain this just a little bit better, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. Yeah, the open pit concept and digging a hole and surrounding it with a bunch of foundation walls was really painful to work with, and then, you know, to place in the stairs and everything, I just really had to go back and redo a lot of work that I had already done, and it just felt like I would try to solve a problem for something, and then it would just open up a bunch of other problems. So this was a very problematic build in that kind of a sense. And when I was doing the Central Station Library build, where I had to build around create a world objects that I couldn't move, I found that I had less problems with that. But yeah, I'm really glad that I would have saved this build for a time when I could actually play test it, because had I had done this in the Create a World editing game mode, which, may I remind you, I don't have access to because Create a World is got a mind of its own, or at least mine does. But yeah, had I had done this in the editing game mode in Create a World, I would not have been able to play test it, and that would have included like Sims pathing and route founding, because what I do is I try to get a sim to go down like each path that I want them to actually go through. And, you know, luckily there was a really great pedestrian flow with this lot, and I didn't have to worry about that as much. But yeah, it just like fixing the problems in that station level just led into one thing, and it just led into another. And then, you know, in the beginning, I really had the open pit part of it really small and divided into 4 different quadrants. That goes through a heck of an evolution, because I decided to open it up even more, because it just kind of felt that the centerpiece wasn't big enough, and I didn't want to take away more space from the platform level, since the platform level is really like, it's not the focal point of the lot, but it's something that players can enjoy. So I thought that if I had to make the central point of the lot larger, it would cover too much of the open pit, and I didn't want that for Sims players. I really wanted them to enjoy the open pit concept as much as I do. So yeah, that was kind of some of the thought process that I had put into that. I did end up making the open pit portion larger by getting rid of some of the floors, and I really like how that actually turned out and what it evolved into, because it allowed, I think it conveyed it much better and much stronger that Sims can, you know, descend into the platform level, and even though they can't, but they can look down. It allows players to really understand the story being told here, and that this is a very fancy, very beautiful plaza built on top of, or reconstructed or restored on top of a major metro station track. And in order to get that major metro station to get emulated, I had to really open it up a little more so that players can actually look and see that there are modern platforms on the level below. And as the person who has actually built the lot, it also felt really dumb that I was putting so much work and so much time into the platform levels only to mostly hide it. So yeah, I guess on a subconscious level, I really wanted to open up the pit even more just for that reason alone, and that I just didn't want my time that I had dedicated to even doing an open pit concept go to waste. And the fact that, you know, I'm sure you're seeing it on screen here, I'm mostly hiding all of that work, and it's like, why even bother if I'm just going to hide most of it? So yeah, that was another reason why I wanted to open up the platform pit part of it even more, was just for that reason as well. And yeah, I think that players and myself will actually enjoy that aspect of the open pit station too. And it also, like I keep saying, like, it helps to tell the story that SimCity does have an active metro station, and here's a little peekaboo at what it would look like underground had we had access to those kind of graphic assets or objects in the Sims 3 Create a World, or even in the Sims 3 game. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to do there. Speaking of which, like, in the, I believe it was Moonlight Falls, or the Hollow World, the Sims 3, it's from the Sims 3 store. It's the Spooky Hollow World, and I completely forget the name. I feel so stupid for that because I used quite a bit of their objects, but interestingly enough, it came with quite a few different train track objects, and I placed them down here just to kind of experiment. I probably did this off camera, but I did it as an experiment, and it just kind of felt like the tracks weren't suitable for this. It felt more like they were either like too skinny for my liking. They just felt like out of scale in comparison, and that's kind of, I mean, The Sims 3, I mean, one of my criticisms for The Sims 3 is that it kind of loses its perspective on scale as the franchise evolves, and this was kind of one of those points where it did, was just with those train tracks with the downloadable Haunted Hollow World. Oh, I completely forget what it's called. Don't worry, it'll come to me by the next time I record because I'm gonna quickly Google it in between takes here. But with that world, that was one of those instances where they actually lost a little bit of their scale and perspective, in my opinion. And that's just me being like really picky about The Sims 3. And I think a big reason for that is that they used those objects that and placed them in their Create a World version that were more like further away, so they would in fact be smaller than how they appeared. I mean, I did use them for the diner build that I did way back in Old Town. So it's like, it's got a time and a place. So it was either like the tracks that I needed to use were either too small or too big. Either way, it felt out of scale, which is why I ended up just deciding to build my own train tracks and just kind of figuring out what those materials and colors would actually be. So again, it was one of those instances where I felt very okay with that. And I don't mind how the train tracks turned out either. And when we actually get to the platform level, you'll see that I just kind of carve out like a little bit of like a pure black walls to, you know, sort of convey that it is an underground tunnel that the trains are like disappearing into. It's a lot of illusion, it's a lot of set dressing. And that's really what this open pit metro station is one big plaza on top of a bunch of set dressing. And like I mentioned before, getting it to function would be something that I think would be more problematic and not worth my time. Like even if I decided to completely try to hack the system to do what Burrowsburg did, and my goodness, did they ever do a great job with their metro stations. Like, if you haven't checked it out, there are some great reviews on Burrowsburg out there, so feel free to just like drop into there. But yeah, for this world and for my own skill set and my own creative limitations, like I just really didn't want to open up the I just really didn't want to make this area playable for players, just because it just felt like it would cause more problems, especially with the stairs, or God forbid if I tried to put in an elevator here, that would have been a mess. But yeah, I still enjoy how this open pit ended up looking. It just has to go through a little bit of an evolution before it actually becomes something that is that I feel is celebrated, or even like worthy of the lot and worthy of the location. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that there. I did place a couple of other objects surrounding the lot. Like, you would have seen me place the food truck stop. So obviously there's going to be a food truck stop here. And yeah, obviously there are going to be some late night subway stations as well. But you know, the food truck stop was something I totally intended for this lot. And just as a side note, across from this lot again are the business and science buildings. And when I was doing the platforms on that, like I wanted the design of that to match this and vice versa. But when I was doing the science and business buildings, and I probably mentioned it in that episode, I had originally wanted to open up that platform and just kind of make it a little more mixed use, like with a restaurant or something. But with rabbit hole buildings and with the way that the platforms were shaped, what rabbit hole buildings actually do is they just kind of like sink through, and that's like just in case you're placed on a hill or something and they just needed to fill in that gap of space. So it's not something I'm complaining about. It's just like a limitation that I have to work with. And the platforms were just so oddly shaped that it just didn't feel right to place like a restaurant or to open it up for anything. So, unfortunately I missed out on a little bit of urban gameplay there, but I guess to make up for it, I'm placing the food truck stop just towards the entrance here, just to try to get more street life into this particular stretch of downtown. And I think it will be successful. Like as soon as the other lots are built out in this little green belt, I suppose, this little green perimeter, not a perimeter, this little green square, this green block in the middle of downtown. Once those other lots are built out, it's all gonna make a lot more sense, and I think it'll all bring a lot more activity that just kind of spills over into each other. The idea being like, you'd probably go to the park right across just north of the plaza, and then when you're done there, you'll take the subway train back to wherever you came from, whether that's like Bridgeview or Old Town or Uptown or what have you. So that's kind of the idea here, is that it's to use the green space within the middle of downtown to really foster a lot of activity that just kind of spills into each other. And then it also functions as a transit concourse for commuters that are going to work and trying to commute back home as well. So that's just like a little bit more on the vision there and how I wanted this open pit metro station to really function as. As we move into actually decorating the open pit metro station part of the build, you'll see exactly why I wanted to open up more light and to give players like a bigger peekaboo into the metro station itself, because I spent a lot of time here actually, especially when it comes to getting the train tracks correct. I even tried to do little switches here and there because that would make sense, but when I tried to do the use the short, the short fence tool or whatever they're called, when I tried to use that tool, the fence tool, to create those switches, it just looked off and it just looked weird, and so I decided not to do it. They switch off camera, so as a player you'll just have to imagine that if trains needed to switch, they're switching in the tunnels before they enter the station, which I actually think is something that is reflective of real life anyways, but I could be totally off on that. So yeah, feel free to comment in the comment section if that is the case or if it's not the case. I'm pretty sure it's the case that switches have to happen before or after stations. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's even general knowledge even. So I'm not too sure why I am thinking I am sharing anything enlightening, but hey, I ramble as I usually do, so we are just going to continue on that. But yeah, something that I felt was very important with the metro station was just to kind of give it that sense of urban place. And those gates in the middle are not only like functional in terms of like it's supposed to provide that barrier between trains, but I also wanted to use it as an opportunity to put in some different kind of posters and to just kind of show that there is more of an urban presence here, and that, street art could be found in this lot or in any of the surrounding downtown lots there, and that these posters are there and they're advertised space that's been rented out by companies all over. So that was really the idea with having it emulated within this build here, was just to kind of show that sort of bit of realism. I hope that's making a little bit of sense here. I did want to touch a little bit about street art as well, which is a skill that came with the Sims 3 University expansion pack. Essentially, with that skill, you can tag walls, you can create wall murals or floor murals, or tag floors, I think, even. And it's a really interesting skill because Sims can get arrested for doing it, for example. But it's a very interesting skill because you can technically tag nearly anything. And when I've been doing these downtown builds, and for anything within the downtown core, I have sort of been keeping that in mind. So you're probably seeing some blank walls here and there within the city, and really it's an opportunity for your Sims. Like if you have a Sim that, you know, gets into the street art skill, or someone that really levels up in it, you can have them actually, you can give, there's plenty of opportunity for them to like put on their murals or to tag buildings and whatnot. And that was something that was done by design here, is that I really wanted to encourage, you know, Sims that are into that kind of thing. So yeah, that was something that I took into consideration. And I guess like even with the platform levels being inaccessible, if you use cheats, or if you have the teleportation pad lifetime reward, you can certainly get a Sim to just teleport down there and to and to work their magic on the walls. So that is certainly an option there, but it's something that I have been keeping in mind when doing these urban build outs, is just like, where would a street artist want to put on a mirror or spray a mural or something? I think I'm getting a little tongue-tied here, but that was something I have been taking into consideration throughout this entire build. Another thing that I just kind of wanted to touch upon as well is with the stairs. This is another like opportunity with this particular build, at least, in that the stairs themselves can be considered decorative. And so I had them match I know it probably doesn't look it because I am sort of building in spring, probably during like an early morning time frame, since I was busy playtesting before the release of the world and all that. But the stairs and the walls, they match the platforms across the street of the science and business buildings. But the stairs themselves are indeed decorative objects, much like what I did with the police station, the business and science buildings, and also the city hall, is that I use those stairs as those decorative elements, and they are absolutely used again here, just to give that sense of elevation, that sense of different levels. And yeah, I was really happy with the way that the stairs eventually turned out, but they did have to go through a bit of a journey before I got them to a place where I really enjoyed them. And so that journey has certainly been filmed throughout here. And speaking of journeys, the placement of the actual subway stations themselves from late night was a heck of a journey as well. On one hand, I really considered hiding them just behind some walls, because they're this really ugly green. Well, not ugly green, I take that back. They're this really obnoxious green. Okay, maybe I'm not doing better. They're a green color that doesn't match the rest of the lot, is really what I'm trying to say here. And you know, it just really wasn't something that was matching the rest of the lot, and that's really all I can say about that, because we can't change the colors of the metro subway stops from late night. So I just kind of put a little bit of an awning above them, and I put some columns and some glass windows just to sort of emulate that these columns are protected by the historical association of SimCity, I suppose. And yeah, I tried to like dress them up as best as I can to make them look like they fit with the rest of the lot, but they really didn't. And even the placement of them was like difficult to kind of work with. I eventually decided to stagger them. I decided to stagger both the north and the south stations, but I knew that I absolutely wanted 2 stations, because on this lot, there's really going to be about 4 entrances at least that you can get to the SimCity Plaza station here. And yeah, I really wanted it to feel like you could access it at any point, and that included the actual metro stations themselves. Like I imagine you would, your sim would get off at the northern station just to go to the park that's just right next to it, or perhaps even to some of the other builds that I am not going to choose to reveal because I think that they are very creative. I'll leave those as a little bit of a surprise there for you, but that was kind of the idea here, is that I did want this plaza to feel like it could be accessed by all sides, and I wanted to facilitate that with the sim pedestrian traffic, and yeah, these late night metro stations are really killing me. Like they okay, I will be fair here and say that they do look in place when matched with the right kind of buildings. Like when I placed it in the Old Town Station restaurant build, it looked like it matched, you know? I will be fair and say that, but everywhere else, it's just looking everywhere. Okay, maybe it's just this lot that is going to look a little out of place, but I tried my best to disguise it. I even threw some of those wonderful glass floor carpets that came with Into the Future, and I thought that kind of helped to modernize it a little bit, and also help to like disguise the metro stations just a tiny bit here. I'm not too sure if I was entirely successful, but unfortunately I am going to prioritize the function of those stations over the aesthetics of the rest of the lot. Sure, they might stick out like a sore thumb, might stick out like two sore thumbs, but I still stand by where I placed them, and I stand by like what I did to actually try to make them look like they fit the lot better than what they actually do. On the assumption that everything goes smoothly for the release of SimCity as a world and all that for you guys to download, I will say this. At this point in the Speedbuild series, I am obviously going to continue doing what I'm doing, and that is finishing up a neighborhood before moving on to another. And that also will include when I upload lots as well. So basically, you know, looking at what we have left for the downtown core or the CBD, I have about these, I have about, oh, how many do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, okay, wait, 3 across, okay. I have 6 total lots to build within the green space that I've got in the middle of the downtown core, and then I've got 2 other lots that I need to build that are just across from the movie theater and also just south of the spa as well, before I consider like the downtown CBD kind of done. So once those lots are built out and once those episodes release, that'll be when I will update the Sims file net download, Sims file share net download, or whatever that thing is called. And I'll update that with the lots as I complete each neighborhood. I think I even say it in the trailer as well. In fact, I know I say it in the trailer, which is going to be a saving grace for mine. So yeah, we have about 7 more lots after today to go before I upload them to be downloaded off of the Sims file share network. So very excited to start doing that for you guys, to start offering that to you guys, and yeah, that's something that I really wanted to continue doing, because each time I do these episodes, if I was to like export it and all that, I just feel like it would be a little too tedious for me, and I'd rather release it to you one neighborhood at a time, while, you know, beforehand, like giving you guys all the lots you need necessary to actually have a functioning game. So having that school, etc. Like I've already explained that part. So we're now moved on to just finishing up each of the neighborhoods, giving each of these neighborhoods like a certain flair that they have, and yeah, continuing the build outs that way. I mean, to be fair, you do get 3 complete neighborhoods right away from the release of the SimCity world, which is the harbor, the old town, and the government campus. Plus, like, you get all of the spot builds that I was doing just to at least make the worlds functional for players that choose to download the lots. So there is all of that and more. Yeah, and so like continuing the series, it's I'm finally like relieved to kind of get back into finishing up neighborhood by neighborhood. Even though I enjoyed the spot builds for what they were, I also just, you know, having them just randomly pop up in the different neighborhoods is sort of bothering me. Maybe I'm just being too picky about it, but you know, I can't wait. Like, it'll feel very satisfying once I've actually completed a full neighborhood and moved on to another. So the neighborhood that we move on to after downtown will be the Midtown neighborhood, but that's not for a while since we have about 7 more lots to build. And I'm very excited to like share with you guys some of those ideas there, because I got some really neat ideas when it comes to building out the rest of the lots for that green gap that we got going on there. So I'll share with you that the next build that we'll do is, it's just gonna be the 64 by 64 lot immediately north of this one, and immediately north of the plaza. And it's going to be a big park, and it's going to be a very beautiful park. And I'll explain more of that vision in that episode. So I'll just kind of tease you guys there with that one. But it turns out very beautiful, and luckily for me, very simple, especially in comparison to this build, because this one was hella complicated. Like, I would even describe it, I've probably already said it, but it felt it was more complicated than the Central Station Library build. And that one had objects that I would never have access to move since it was placed in there through the Create a World tool. This one I had all of the, well, quote unquote freedom that the game could possibly offer, and I still struggled with the open pit concept because I like to flood things, and then when they flood I have to do all kinds of crazy stuff with the elevations and the levels and all that. So it is what it is. Like, I probably sound like I'm complaining, but I enjoyed the process as it was. It did, honestly, like, since I'm recording this so late, and because I had to film the trailer and get everything set up for the launch of the Sims 3 world, like, this lot kind of put me off from building in the game again, and probably influenced why the next lot will be a more simpler build. But I've got a lot more complicated builds on the way, so don't worry about that. Like, I'm not getting lazy on you guys. I just know where I have simpler builds and more complicated builds when it comes to the SimCity world. And you know, this green space in the middle of downtown, it does have mostly complicated builds. I would say like 60-40, 60% being complicated builds, 40% being simpler builds that I can just kind of relax a little more with, I guess. Builds that'll probably end up in episodes that are 30 minutes or less, whereas this one has just been, this has been an adventure. Like, this one really had to take its journey, and so I just allowed it to take its journey with this longer build here. Much like how I had to let the Crumble Bottom Chateau mansion build really evolve right before my very eyes too. I just decided to take my time with this one, make it detailed where I wanted it to be detailed, and you know, took me quite a bit. But yeah, very happy with the way that this build turned out anyways. Like, when I was able to actually get the open pit and the platform levels functioning as I intended them to, that's really when it helped to like come together and all of that. Speaking of which, I also decided to drop in the Lucky Palms wishing well as well. Okay, what a bad sentence there. But the Lucky Palms wishing well has also been dropped on this slot, and I didn't just do it once, I did it twice just for balance. And you know, let me know what you guys think on that. I really wanted to incorporate that fountain on this slot anyways, so no matter what, it's going to be incorporated here. But what do you guys feel about both of them being there? I'm kind of 50-50 on it. On one hand, I feel like it adds proper balance to the plaza, but on the other hand, I kind of feel like it's overdoing it in a way. Yeah, let me know what you think and your thoughts below. I'd be more than happy to read them, and you guys know that I do anyways, so it's not like your comments get ignored or anything. But yeah, I'm very happy with the way everything just kind of turned out here in terms of the plaza. I think that it honestly like turned into a really great build, and when the other lots get built within this little green belt within the downtown core, it's going to make a lot more sense. So right now it looks a little bit out of place, but it's going to make a lot more sense. Trust me on this, and the next build will help you guys see the vision as to why. Another really big theme that I wanted to end off with the SimCity Plaza lot build here is just like the use of fountains. I mean, the Lucky Palms fountain really reminded me of the Trevi fountain in Rome. I mean, in a small way, I suppose, but I really wanted to play with adding in these large fountains and these large pools of water, with these fountains just kind of spouting up everywhere. Like, I really wanted this to be a nice lot and something serene. Like, even though it would be something that is super busy in a realistic context, like it would be a super busy place to be, since it's got like a major metro station just underneath it and plenty of destinations for commuters to go around in all directions, and it connects up to like 2 or 3 lines of the metro station. And speaking of which, like, I will release on a video on the metro station lines in a separate video sometime in the future. I have no plans for that one yet, but yeah, like realistically, this would be a very busy place, and so I really wanted to balance that busyness and to balance that noise with something a little more serene. And for me, that really comes in the form of the fountains here. And when I was placing these large fountains just adjacent to the platform level, it just kind of felt right not to overdo it too much. Like, I just wanted to see movement of water. I didn't want to be distracted by it. So that's why I really only use the geyser fountains for each of those big fountain pools there. I just wanted to, you know, give Sims a view of the water and to like maybe cool them off on a hot summer's day. I personally play with only 7 days of winter in my game, so mostly in my head the world would be hot all year long. And yeah, that's exactly what I am working with when doing this, and I thought that the fountains really turned out really nice. It is a theme that I continue to use in the next build, and again, that next build helps to make this lot make a lot more sense as it relates to the other lots in this little green spot of the downtown core. So I'm very excited to actually get that shown to you guys, since it helps to tell that story better, like I keep mentioning. But yeah, the fountains here were really, like, as much as I complained about them, they were also very necessary in my view. And just because the functions of it just really like give me a headache. In almost like every lot I have built using these fountains, using the fountain tool, it's always been a headache just with the terrain that surrounds it. But you know, that is something that you guys will continue to hear about, because I'm sure that I'm going to run into that issue yet again. But yeah, we are coming to the end of the episode here. Here, I'm just really putting some of the final touches just on the lot. And, you know, there's a lot of fountain objects and a lot of just like adding in those classical things. Yeah, and you know what? I even like went back and tried to decorate the Lucky Palms fountains just like a little more. It just felt a little too plain there, and I also wanted to give more of an important structure on top of it. And you know, I've seen chandeliers like hung under like major overpasses and all that, like in Vancouver, Canada, which is a place that I used to live at. And it was something that I took as inspiration for this, because I just felt like, you know, for such an outdoor space, having a chandelier hanging above a really beautiful fountain was just really like showing how opulent that this place really is. So I decided to take that inspiration and creative liberty here. That chandelier again is something that I did download, and I will leave that download in the description box. It is the only custom content that I've really got on here beyond the Sims 3 store, because You guys know that I am absolutely addicted to the Sims 3 store. It's a bad addiction. I've got to kick it sometime. I've got to get into an like a 12-step program for the Sims 3 store, something like that. Something needs to be done. But yeah, the chandelier itself is something that is from outside of the Sims 3 store. So that download will be in the description box and you guys can pick it up for yourself. It's free. And it has 2 versions of it that you would have seen me play with, a shorter version and a multi-level version. And obviously I love the multi-level version so much. And also if you download the Hollow World, the spooky Hollow World, yeah, I didn't search it up in between takes, sorry guys, but it's with the Sims 3 world, and I believe it also comes with like these decorative objects that are just like hanging chains. You would have seen me use it in the graveyard build just briefly, like if you squint or if you blink you'll miss it. But yeah, they come with these hanging chain decorative objects, which is something that one could use if they wanted to like place this chandelier underneath one of those, if you wanted it to like extend down further into the like further through like a 3-story chandelier. I'll experiment a little bit more with that in an upcoming build. Okay, too early to tease that. I will experiment with that sometime in the future. Let me just put it that way. But yeah, I really enjoyed this build. I really enjoyed how it all turned out. And with those chandelier touches, with just like adding in those statues and the extra fountain pieces, just so that the back of the Lucky Palms fountains didn't feel so barren. I feel like this lot really just kind of comes together. It does convey that, you know, it does convey that this was an archaeological site that was restored to its former glory, that also, you know, happens to have like a major metro station underneath it. There are plenty of examples of that in like countries like Russia and like I'm sure other European countries as well. And yeah, that was something I really wanted to emulate here, and with the creative abilities that I have, I tried to represent it as best as I possibly can. And yes, these kind of classical, this classical architecture will be revisited in future builds as well in the remaining green lots that I have in this downtown core. But I think that's gonna about do it for today's episode. I'm just gonna finish it up here and wrap it up. If the tours aren't already playing, then feel free to stick around for the tours at the end there. I think I finally do get some summer shots in there, so if the lighting has been sort of like feeling off to you, well, luckily I think that's gonna be coming about here. I think that, you know, this build really turned out beautifully. I can't wait to work on the rest of this green core here, since it has been sticking out like a sore thumb to me, and to finally be able to actually build on it is feeling really good for me. So I am hopeful that it will continue to just evolve and to really come into its own. But that's gonna about do it for today. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching, and if you've been enjoying this series, if you've been enjoying my content, then feel free to like this video and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And if you would like to watch more videos of my speed builds, well, this is a part of a playlist, so feel free to just kind of peruse that if you haven't already. Anyways, thank you again for watching, and I hope you have yourself a wonderful day.